In the city where I live, there used to be an old, abandoned insane asylum that was said to be haunted. From what I gather from what my older siblings have told me, a doctor apparently went crazy and started purposely killing his patients. There were also a few stories, like one about a nurse that was either murdered or committed suicide there, and one that talked about how a little girl haunted the basement of the asylum. The place was absolutely trashed, and it was falling apart. There was even one hallway that had a giant hole in the floor, and if you weren't careful, you could fall in and seriously hurt yourself. I never had the chance to actually explore the asylum since I was far too young, and it's since been torn down. However, my brother and sister used to sneak into it a few times when they were teenagers. Getting into the place was dangerous. It was owned by a biker gang who would shoot anyone that they caught wandering onto their property. Also, you had to climb a few fences, and when you got into the building, you had to be careful about where you stepped since, as I said before, it was falling apart. Anyway, one night my sister and her friends snuck into the place and began to wander around. As they were doing so, they suddenly saw lights being flashed into the building and could hear people talking outside. They knew it was the gang members, and not wanting to get caught, they ran into a few rooms and hid. My sister ran into one particular room and managed to hide behind some old equipment. She said that she felt someone watching her, and when she turned around, this crazy-looking old man was holding a gun right in front of her face. He started yelling at her, making absolutely no sense, and kept pointing the gun at her. Eventually, the gang members started screaming from outside the building that if they didn't come out and soon, they were going to start shooting. My sister managed to get away from the old man and meet up with her friends outside. And luckily, the biker gang decided to just let them leave. My sister said that she never saw the old man come out, and that she doesn't know what became of him. So, crazy old man who almost shot my sister? Let's not meet.
About 3 years ago, I moved to London. I was looking for a flatmate, but had no luck. I turned to my friend Marcus, and after a week or two, Marcus and I moved in together. After we moved in, he put some of his stuff in storage so that he could make room for me in his flat. When I moved in, everything was fine and well. Fast forward about a year. I went to get some stuff out of the storage locker that Marcus put his stuff in. As I opened the door, an absolutely rank stench hits me like a bat. I switched the light on and saw a couple of old boxes and a couch. I was looking for the source of the smell, but I couldn't find it. I grabbed what I came for and left before I could vomit. Now fast forward to about a month ago, I went back to the storage unit to get something else, and the smell was even worse than before. I had to hold my nose as I walked into the storage unit. I saw an open box and decided to look into it. I found stuffed animals, like dead animals that were stuffed. I looked into the box under that one, and I found rotting animals. I was completely disgusted, so I went to Marcus to confront him. As I walked into the flat, I shouted, "Marcus, you sick fuck! Why are there dead animals in our storage locker?" He came out of his room and sat me down on the couch. He told me that he wanted to be completely honest with me. And he told me that he was into necrophilia. Let's just say now I've moved in with my parents.
This story is short, but still terrifying. In grade 5, a friend of mine, Chloe, was messaged on MySpace by our mutual friend, Asha. Asha asked Chloe to meet at the park by Chloe's house. Chloe had baseball practice, so she told her maybe another day. Asha insisted that today was best, and she really wanted to hang out, even if it was for just 10 minutes. Chloe told her no again, as she was about to eat dinner and then leave. Chloe found it strange that Asha was so persistent, as they had never hung out at school, let alone afterwards. The next day, Chloe confronted Asha. "I'm sorry I couldn't hang out yesterday. I had baseball practice. I'm free tonight if you want." Asha was confused. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "On MySpace, you asked me to hang out last night." Asha then explained that she didn't message Chloe. Creepier yet, she had recently gotten a new account due to spam she was receiving. The scariest part, to me anyway, is that Asha had referred to the park by its name, which isn't a very common one. A couple years later, my other friends saw a green van parked on the street the park was on, with a middle-aged man inside. That only showed up during soccer games or when lots of kids were around, and would leave when the kids left. My friend lived across the street from the park and noticed this from her window frequently. Chloe deleted MySpace when she got home. Creepy, pedophile MySpace man, I'm sure we'd all agree. Let's not meet.
So, I just moved back to my hometown, but beforehand I was living with my dad in the northern part of the country. This story isn't really one specific time, rather than really creepy things he would do. Like, he was really controlling, and sometimes watched me while I slept. I woke up lots of times to see him standing there, and he admitted to it a few times. Not only that, but he kept 3 big knives in an empty drawer of his dresser, and pictures he took of the conversation I had with my friends, my boyfriend at the time, etc. Whenever he'd pick me up from school, he'd always full-on stare at me. When I approached the car, he'd just stare at me. He'd just lower his head to get a better look and watch me. So after a while of this, one day, I asked him, "Please don't watch me like that. It makes me uncomfortable." He then went on a very loud and angry rampage about how he was my father, and how he had the right to stare at me as much as he wanted, and it wasn't right to tell him not to. He continued to stare. Whenever I entered a room, walked outside, came home, slept, everything. On top of this, he was also a very misogynistic and sexist person. It was just in his nature. And he often treated me like his little trophy and never trusted what I said because I'm female and was always on my period or not thinking straight because of my emotions. Anyways, that's it. It may not seem like much, but I lived with him and no one else in close quarters.
Our school closed down while the drains were being repaired one day, so we got the day off. My brother, 6, and I, 9, rode our bikes to a shopping area a few blocks from our house. We were outside a shop when a man in a suit charged toward us. I thought he was going to ask us why we weren't in school, because it wasn't a public holiday. But instead, he peered down at me and then pushed me to one side. He turned to my brother, and after peering at him for a second, he pulled an object from his pocket. It sort of resembled a metal lollipop, with a cord hanging down from the handle end and disappearing into his bag. He held it up to my brother's face, and my brother shrieked. The man slapped him lightly on the shoulder with his free hand. "It won't hurt if you hold still," he barked. Then he put the disc of the metal thing right up against my brother's eye, so close that it was almost touching the socket. 3 pops of light burst from the disc. The man shoved the metal thing back into his pocket and hurried away from us. My brother was dazed and his eye red and watery, but aside from that, he was unharmed. I didn't know what else to do, so we got on our bikes and rode home. What still bothers me about this story to this day, aside from everything, was the way other adults reacted. An old man sat on a bench right next to us, and a young couple stood not far from him. They all seemed to turn away while this happened. A nice, motherly-looking woman a bit up the road saw the whole thing, and I looked at her after the man rushed off, thinking she might come to help us, but she just turned away and walked off. Later that night, I told my mother what happened. She was very concerned when she heard a man approached us, but when I told her about the metal object, she got irritated and accused me of making up stories. My brother still remembers it, though.
In the 1980s, my family went to the SEC basketball tournament in Birmingham, Alabama. Because of so many fans showing up for the game, all the good hotels and decent motels were sold out. So my family had to stay at a very seedy-looking Travelodge. The door wasn't very secure, the phone was two-tone black and white, the TV had only one channel, and you could barely tell Three's Company was on. Come and knock on our door. I had to pee, so I went to the bathroom and noticed that the toilet top wasn't there. By toilet top, I don't mean the seat, I mean the lid that covers the water and the back. I didn't think much about it, since the rest of the room was so messed up. My dad was out trying to find tickets to the basketball games, and I decided to take a nap. After a while, there was a knock on the door, and I guess the door didn't have a peephole, because my older sister asked, "Who's there?" And the reply was, room service. I guess either my sister or my mom opened the door, and I heard them slam the door and go hysterical, going, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!" The knock on the door had already half woken me up, but their shouting woke me up for real. I asked them what was going on, and they said that there was a scruffy-looking guy holding the lid of the toilet, using it upside down as a tray. Upon the tray was a dildo, anal beads, and 2 packaged condoms. The dildo was white, or maybe off-white, and my mama, you guys are describing, and the sister said it didn't necessarily look unwashed, but it had a brownish stain on most of the shaft. They pushed chairs up against the door until Dad got back, and then we changed motels. So, Travelodge room service? Let's not meet.
I'm not sure if this is the right sub to post this in, but I have a pretty disturbing experience that I would like to share. When I was 13, almost 14, I was a pretty messed up kid. I smoked, drank, stayed out late, caused trouble around the neighborhood, etc. I had a friend who was 12 named Amanda who did the same bad shit that I did. Anyways, I lived in a neighbor of apartment buildings. A bit hard to explain, but it was bought by new management, and with that team came a team of security guards. The kids in the neighborhood at that time all played and hung out together. Our ages ranged from 12 to 16. And one particular security guard became a bit too friendly with us. I never found out his real name, but his nickname was Security Bob. No idea why. I didn't realize how creepy it was until now. He used to give us cigarettes and talk to us as if we were adults. He also never cared if we drank. We thought at the time that it was cool. We felt like he was one of the kids, I suppose. One particular night, my friend Amanda and I were drunk and decided to draw shit on the side of a building. Being stupid, we wrote our names. So, obviously, Security Bob tracked us down. But instead of having our parents or the police called, he simply told us that if we cleaned it off, we wouldn't be in trouble. He said that he had the cleaning supplies in his office and led us there. There was only one man in the office when we got there, and Security Bob seemed to give him a signal of sorts, so he followed us into the back room. He told us to sit down, which was odd because I thought we were just getting cleaning products. He started off by saying he had a proposition for us. He had a film company or something like that, and he told us that he wanted to film us. Apparently, the other security guard was the cameraman. We asked him what he wanted us to do, and he told us stripping or sex. Basically, the more we do, the more money we get. Immediately I said, "That's illegal," to which he said, "Not in Sweden. That's where the tapes go. Nobody here will ever see them. We ship them off." I really didn't believe this. My friend jokingly said something like, "How much money do I get if I only take my sock off?" I realized later that she was stalling, because she texted her sister to come pick us up ASAP. Her sister showed up a couple minutes later and we rushed out the door. The last thing Security Bob said to us was to think about it, and that he would be in contact. I stopped hanging out in my neighborhood for a while. I was too afraid to tell my mother, as she was extremely abusive, and I was afraid that she would say I was lying or blame me. And a month later, the security was gone. No idea where they went. Never asked. Security Bob, let's not meet ever again.
This didn't happen to me, but to my parents. My parents are pretty decent people who've never bothered anyone, to be honest. They always kept to themselves and never had any trouble with neighbors. Anyway, one day we're at home watching TV and the phone rings. My dad picks it up and it's just someone breathing on the line. He says hello a few times, but they don't answer, so he hangs up. Fast forward a few days and my mom is home alone. I'd gone out to a friend's house and my siblings were all with my dad. The phone rings again and my mom picks it up. This guy, whoever he is, starts telling her that he knew she was home alone and that he'd do all sorts of things to her. He threatened to rape her and to rob her and all sorts of shit. My mom at first was a bit shocked, but she just put it down as some pranker going through the phone book. Then this guy starts telling her that he can see her and that he knows she's in the living room. We have two phones, one in the living room and one upstairs. He starts describing what she's wearing. My mother, of course, freaked the fuck out and told him never to call back or she'll call the police. Here's the weird part. Our house is pretty private. We live on a row of attached houses, all with their own private back gardens and 7 to 8 feet walls around them. And the only way you can see into a living room is from the back garden, or if you were looking over the back garden wall. But Mom said she'd seen no one from the living room window at the time. She was pretty freaked out and called my dad crying and he had to dart home. A few days later, the same thing again. My dad picked up the phone this time. They start asking all sorts of personal questions. They said my dad's name, which started to wig him out. They started saying stuff like, "Is that your wife beside you?" Then they'd start threatening to do all sorts of horrific things to him and my mother, which I'd rather not repeat, They started saying stuff like, "Is that your wife beside you?" Then they started threatening to do all sorts of horrific things to him and my mother, which I'd rather not repeat, but it involved more rape threats, not just to my mother, but my father also. Stuff like they tie him up and make him watch and vice versa. My dad is usually one of those laid-back type. Like I said, he rarely wants to hassle people and keeps to himself most of the time. But my mom and brother said he lost it. Like he was pretty close to reaching through the phone and ripping this asshole's throat out, telling this guy that he'd fucking kill him if he ever called again or touched any of the family. Having enough of this, my parents called the police and they came out to the house. Unfortunately, the calls were from a withheld number, but the police did what they could. But we never found out who was making those calls. Thankfully, they never got another call like that again. But I'll never ever forget how hysterical my mother was that day. To this day, she still won't answer the phone if it's a number she doesn't know. And she has a huge purebred German shepherd to keep her company, who doesn't take kindly to strangers in the garden.
I just learned of this story over the weekend when my Uncle S was in town. He's always been a bit of a jokester, and growing up, he'd always be pulling pranks and laughing. I don't think I'd ever seen him serious before this moment. He's a huge car fan, and asked to see my new Infiniti G37 sedan, so I took him out in my grandfather's driveway to show him the car with my dad. We did the usual pop the hood and rev the engine type stuff, and we all pretended that we knew what we were looking at as we stared into the hood of the car. My uncle said he wanted to tell us about something that happened to him in college that he felt would serve as a good lesson to me. He trembled as he first started telling the story and said that he hadn't ever told anyone about this before, but seeing me with my new car and the fact that I'm a young guy made him want to bestow some knowledge upon me. My uncle went to a rural college. The campus was in the middle of a town of about 10,000 people, most being college students or people who worked at the college. He moved off campus his junior year and lived about 3 miles outside town and the bar districts. After having quite a few beers with his friends, he decided he better walk home since he had an exam that morning. As he was walking down the country road with cornfields on both sides of the road, a man in a truck pulled up who appeared to be a friendly farmer. He offered to give my uncle a lift to save him the walk. My uncle, being drunk and not thinking straight, took him up on his offer. He got in the front seat, and with that, they took off. He gave the man directions to the house that he lived in with his college buddies, and then about 5 minutes into the drive, noticed that the man had gone past the turn he needed to take. He informed the man that his house was behind them and he needed to turn around, but the older farmer man said that he'd lived in this town for 50 years and knew a shortcut he would teach him. That's when my uncle began to get suspicious. He started asking questions and surveying his situation. The farmer obviously had a final destination as he continued down the road, then eventually pulled into an old driveway with a very old barn that was falling apart to one side. My uncle said it looked as if the roof was halfway caved in. My uncle's plan was to bolt the second the man slowed down. So when the farmer slowed down and parked, my uncle pushed the unlock hatch and gave the door a shove. The lock had been sawed off, and only part of it popped up. At this point, he knew he was in for it. The driveway was made of gravel, and there was a very old playground set in the front of the yard that was completely rusted and falling apart. There was also a shed in the back of the property behind the barn, and he said that there were lights on inside. But the rest of the property was dark and only illuminated by the headlights of the truck and the moon. My uncle then suddenly ended the story with, "Then I fought him off and sprinted home," and said, "Let's go back inside." My dad stared at him the rest of the night, and my uncle mostly kept to himself. I don't think he wanted to admit it, but something obviously happened at that farm. Needless to say, never accept rides from anyone.
My dad grew up in a rural farm country and had to walk half a mile to and from his bus stop. He was the youngest of 5, and he was in his last year of elementary school while his siblings were either in middle school or high school. This meant he went to the same bus stop as his siblings, but they were picked up and dropped off by the bus stop at different times. My grandma was a single mom who worked as a nurse and couldn't pick him up, but my aunts and uncles usually took good care of him. There was rarely trouble in my dad's county, besides small things like bar fights, poaching, or teens taking tractors out for joyrides. One day when he was walking home on the stretch of the county road on my family's property, he saw a van whiz by him. While it was private farmland and the gate was often locked, my grandma's family usually let the locals drive through as a shortcut, so my dad wasn't too alarmed. However, my dad did become a bit alarmed when he realized the van was parked a ways up the road from his uncle's house. As soon as he passed his uncle's house, the van sped up. It didn't stop until it reached the road at the bottom of the hill that led to my dad's great uncle's house. My dad looked right inside the van as he passed and saw a gruff, bug-eyed older man. My dad said that the look in his eyes was unsettling, like an excited shark setting its sights on its prey. My dad innocently asked, "What are you doing on Papa's farm?" The old man got out of the car and gave my dad some spiel about how his parents had been in a car crash and my dad needed to go with him. My dad's alarms went off for one single reason. His parents were divorced and his dad lived 2 states away. His parents couldn't stand to be around each other, much less be in the same car unless it was absolutely necessary. Thinking quick, my dad asked, "Did you take my brother Ricky to the hospital already?" The old man told my dad,
"Oh yeah, I picked up Ricky from school and took him already."
My dad yelled at the man,
"I don't have a brother Ricky."
He ran towards his house, cutting across the forest. The old man followed behind, yelling at my dad. My dad was about to give out from exhaustion when he saw the driveway to his house. He saw my grandma wasn't even home and got scared the man would try to come inside the house when he saw Uncle Buck standing on the porch cleaning his favorite rifle. This struck my dad as odd because Grandma had told my dad that Uncle Buck had gone on vacation and my dad hadn't seen him in months.
"Uncle Buck, that old man is trying to get me in the car, saying Mom and Dad are at the hospital."
Uncle Buck was a scary looking guy. He was a World War II vet with Willie Nelson braids and a ZZ Top beard. He was a biker who drank whiskey and smoked cigars and won plenty of bar fights. Definitely the kind of guy you didn't want to mess with. He didn't say anything as my dad ran inside the house. He watched from his bedroom window as Uncle Buck put his rifle together really quick and yelled something at the van. The old man narrowed his eyes at my dad and spun around down the driveway. It took my dad a few minutes to calm down before he went back to the porch to talk to Uncle Ben. Oh my God, Spider-Man. But when he went there, he didn't see Uncle Buck anywhere around the house. When my dad's siblings and Grandma got home, he told them what happened. According to my dad, Grandma got whiter than a sheet and asked my dad if he was sure it was Uncle Buck.
"Sure. He was even wearing that new motorcycle jacket Mama got him for his birthday."
Grandma didn't say anything for a few hours. That night after dinner, my grandmother explained to my dad that Uncle Buck had died in a motorcycle crash a few months earlier in Florida, and that they had just buried him in those exact clothes. So my dad was just imagining it. My dad explained to her that he was cleaning his rifle, that apparently he kept under lock and key in Grandma's basement. When he died, they couldn't find the keys anywhere, so the case remained locked. The scariest part? When my grandma went to check the case, it was unlocked and unlatched. Gotta thank Uncle Buck for saving my dad. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today.
So, I've lurked on this page for a while, and I finally decided to share a pretty terrifying experience that happened to me 7 years back when I was 14. I used to live in a pretty shitty area, and went to a bad high school too. So, every place my friends and I used to hang out was pretty seedy. There were gangs, the occasional drive-by shooting, all that kind of stuff. But we were all used to it though. And since we pretty much avoided that kind of scene, we weren't targets for any violence, and were allowed to go wherever as long as we stuck together in a pack of 3 or more. Anyway, my friends and I made plans to go to the movies like we often did on weekends. It was a few hours out of the house, fun, relatively cheap, and we got snacks too. So we did it pretty frequently. We often went to this one shady movie theater that was literally on the outskirts of town, was barely in business, and had horrible staff. Mostly because they let us into whatever movies we wanted, regardless of rating. So, it was me and about 5 other people, and once we got there, we stocked up on snacks, soda, and candy. Before long, I had to pee really, really badly, but my friends wouldn't accompany me to the bathroom. so I decided to go alone. Now, as I said before, the movie theater was really, really shitty. The floors were covered in trash, and there was maybe one employee working at the moment, as far as I could see. The employee was also obviously there because their parents were forcing them to. Hardly over 16, probably. Bored looking, and busy listening to her MP3 player and texting on her LG chocolate. I walked into the corridor that led to the bathrooms and entered the girls' bathroom. At first, I thought it was empty, which both relieved and creeped me out. Relieved in the sense that I was an awkward child who hated acknowledging people, and creeped out because, it was a pretty big, dirty bathroom that echoed, and you always felt like somebody was watching you. There were about 6 stalls. In the first section of the bathroom was your standard mirror and sink combo, and then there was a turn, and you had 2 sets of 3 stalls facing each other. I entered the very closest to the door so I could get the hell out of there as soon as I was done peeing, but I found that the toilet was covered in feces and what appeared to be menstrual blood. The next toilet was absolutely encrusted in dirt, and the third, furthest inward, was the cleanest. I stepped inside and started doing my business. That was when I heard the giggling. Low, steady, batshit insane giggling. I froze. I wasn't sure where it was coming from, but my blood literally felt like it had turned to ice. The giggling was slowly growing louder, more to a sort of cackle now, and I was freaked the fuck out. I had no idea what to do, so I sat there when I should have ran. The door across from mine clicked open, and I saw a pair of shoes shuffling over. I prayed silently that they would ignore me and continue to the door, but they didn't. They walked right over to my door, slowly and purposefully menacingly, and stopped so that whoever those feet belonged to, they were facing my door head on. Probably with their nose touching the door. More laughing. I thought for a moment that I'd throw up. I looked at the shoes. For a second, I felt relieved, because they were a Mary Jane type of shoes over a pair of white socks, and I thought maybe it was a little kid. But when I noticed the size, easily an adult's, I felt my stomach sink. The person began scratching on the door, laughing hysterically. I wiped myself and lifted my knees to my chest, staring at the shoes. Whoever it was, they started getting onto their knees, and I began to feel full-fledged panic. They were going to try to crawl under the stall. On the floor, I saw a little frilly pink dress, about knee length, and a flash of long, greasy gray hair. Then, a hand reached under the stall. I was breathing heavy and crying at this point, unsure of what to do, since I was pretty much trapped. I texted my friends a bunch of times, begging for them to come and help me, but I assumed their phones were off, since I also tried calling them and nothing happened. The hands were long, veiny, and literally covered in burn scars and long, shiny cuts that had obviously been stitched in a botched job. In a stroke of bravery, I stuck out my foot and stomped the shit out of one of her hands. I was wearing a pair of those clunky boots that used to be so popular, so it must have really hurt. Their hands retreated from under the stall, and all I could hear was muttering. I wasn't sure what to do at this point, so I just stood there, waiting. Then, suddenly, in a completely sober, sane-sounding voice, this creepy old-ass lady just said, "Open the fucking door." I screamed at the top of my lungs, and she started saying the most fucked up shit. No longer weird or crazy sounding. Eventually, I heard the bathroom door open, and she immediately stopped and retreated back to what I assumed to be a bathroom stall. When I exited the stall, I saw the young girl who was working at the front desk looking concerned. At this point, I'd been in the bathroom for maybe 15 minutes. She told me she heard screaming, and I rushed her out of the bathroom before I could tell her what happened. She was thoroughly freaked out, and went into the back room for a minute, where I assumed she was getting her manager. Another, slightly older-looking guy came out and went into the girl's bathroom, knocking on the walls and announcing that whoever was there would need to leave. Upon investigating further, he found that all the stalls were empty, so we assumed that when I'd went with the girl to get her manager, whoever was harassing me escaped. It was pretty traumatic, and when I went back to my friends, they were concerned about where I'd been. After I told them what happened, we left without finishing the movie. We never went to that theater again. My parents wanted to contact the police, but I didn't. To this day, when I go to a movie theater bathroom, I force one of my friends to accompany me. So, weird old lady who harassed me in a public bathroom? Let's not meet.
For some background information, I am a female, about to start my final year at secondary school, after which I'll hopefully be moving to Kitchener for university. Currently, I live in a small town, around 600-700 people, in southwest Ontario, pretty much at the base of the Bruce Peninsula. Now, my family have been living in my current neighborhood since around 2002, so I'm pretty well acquainted with most of the people around here, and my town isn't the worst place by any means, but there are quite a bit of meth users and dealers around, which is really pretty common in a small farming town like this, as sad as it is. And if you're driving around here, you definitely see several empty houses that people use as drug dens, as well as burnt out trailers and vans that people pretty much use as rolling meth labs. We also have our fair share of sex offenders and child predators around, unfortunately. I have several stories about growing up here, but this one is about my scary-ass neighbor who tried to kidnap me when I was 14. It's important to note that this guy is an alcoholic and lost his license for injuring someone while drunk driving several years back, and so now he just drives a golf cart around. He's also unemployed and spends pretty much every day in his underwear and a disgusting stained housecoat, driving around on his cart and drinking either red wine or vodka, straight from the bottle. One night, I'm out walking back from a house where I'd been babysitting when I hear the golf cart come up behind me. I know it's my bum of a neighbor, so I don't turn around, as I don't feel much like talking to him, especially alone when it's getting dark. I'm doing my best to ignore the fact that he's getting closer and closer to me, yelling at me, calling me darling and baby. And then he says,
"Come on, sweetheart. Don't you want to ride on my golf cart? You can come back to my place."
keep in mind, he's got to be at least 60 and is around 6 feet tall and 250 pounds. I'm a 14-year-old girl who would have a hard time tipping the scales at 110 pounds soaking wet. Needless to say, I'm thoroughly grossed out and thinking,
There's literally no one on earth who wants to ride on your fucking golf cart, you disgusting old pervert.
but all I say is,
Piss off, Mr. Solomon.
he's really close now. I can smell the alcohol on his breath, and as he continues to taunt me, making disgusting comments and saying that he wants to fuck me, it would almost be comical being followed by some idiot on a golf cart if it weren't for the horrifying sexual harassment type things he's saying, and for the fact that he's now grabbing at me and trying to catch my arm and pull me toward him. He's definitely drunk out of his mind. We're on a road bordered on one side by forest, on the other side by a row of small trailer houses that they bring in on trucks. The road swoops around the forest and ends in a muddy cul-de-sac where my house is. I'm pretty terrified at this point, and even though I'd been taught my whole life never to go into the woods alone at night, I turn off the road and book it through the dense trees in the direction of my house. He doesn't follow me, he can't drive his golf cart through the trees, and he's way too messed up to chase me on foot. I'm damn near bawling when I see the little porch light on the back of our house. I get through the trees and see my older brother, Dominic, and two cousins, Laszlo and Thomas, sitting on the porch. They're all pretty alarmed to see me upset and ask me what's up, so I tell them Mr. Solomon was bothering me. Our family is Hungarian-Canadian, and not to stereotype, but we have some quick tempers. Also, my brother and cousin are all pretty big guys, all over 6 feet, and pretty strong from working in construction. Add that to their dark hair and half beards, and they all look pretty intimidating. My brother pretty much loses his shit and hops in his truck along with Thomas. They go over to Mr. Solomon's house and they bang on the door, yelling at him that if he ever comes near me again, he'll have them to deal with. Mr. Solomon hasn't bothered me again, and hopefully that's a trend that'll continue. Please, be careful walking alone at night, even if you live somewhere rural like I do.
This happened when I was 17. I'm 22 now. I was working at a local grocery store as a bagger and cart pusher. One afternoon, I was outside in the parking lot minding my own business and gathering the carts. I noticed a purple Detroit cab car next to the cart carrel. Two gentlemen pop out as I am doing my job and ask me if I know any parties around my city. I'm young and naive, so I answer, no, I don't party. I grew up in a wealthy suburban area of Michigan, so it was odd to see two scraggly men in a Detroit cab in the metro area. I continue on with my cart pushing, and as I push them past him, he asked me if I liked older men with lots of money, and that I looked 25 and that I could be in Playboy. So, I politely said no and booked my ass inside, where I immediately bumped into my manager, who I spilled the beans to. We called the cops, and long story short, they both had warrants out for their arrest for huge felonies and were the owners of the largest prostitute ring in Detroit. When the police searched the cab, they found cuffs and a few $100,000 worth of heroin and meth. The only cool thing I got out of it was a certificate from the police department that, for the most part, said, "Thanks for being a good citizen. Sorry you got creeped on."
This story isn't overly scary, but certainly made me feel frightened at the time. I used to work at Target in Melbourne back in 2003 when I was 18. I'm not what you'd call an average female. I'm 6'2", have lots of tattoos, and I'm not hard to miss if you were to come to check out. A quick layout of the store. It was 3 levels, including a basement level where the DVDs were and where I used to work a few shifts. The majority of the time, though, I would spend working at the checkouts. One shift, an older man with gray hair and glasses comes to the checkout. First thing I noticed is he doesn't have any products to buy. He says,
"Wow, you remind me so much of my daughter."
Harmless, right? I smiled and joked about how she must be a great girl. He then began to ask me about my family and where I grew up, etc. Being from Adelaide, I know I probably didn't know this man. It was weird, but not unsettling. Thankfully, there were customers behind him, and I politely said I needed to get back to work. He smiled and said he might bring in some photos one day to show me. I smiled and he left. Didn't think about the encounter at all after that until 2 weeks later when he was back. I wasn't worried, but just annoyed, being 18 and not interested. He showed me photos of his granddaughter and family, and there was a slight resemblance. Again, being a busy store, I had a lot of work to do, and excused myself to get back to work. He stood in the store staring at me for a long time, which I noticed, and this was making me uncomfortable. My biggest mistake was not letting my supervisor know at the time. I didn't really tell anyone except a friend who asked who he was. Skip to 3 weeks later, and yep, there he was. But this time, he looked sad. He managed to get me aside, and I was walking to my break. The photos he showed me were of a funeral. First of all, who the fuck takes photos of a funeral? Well, plenty of people take pictures of funerals. Just don't fucking walk around waiting to show people that they barely even know. He said that his daughter and granddaughter were murdered by his son-in-law, and he missed them very much. I kind of felt sorry for him, but then he said something that sent shivers up my spine.
"I know you're my granddaughter. I'm so happy to have found you again."
What actual fuck? My face went red, as it does when I get nervous. "I don't think so, sir."
I have missed you so much."
He began to cry and grabbed my arm. He tried to hug me, but luckily one of my tall managers walked by and I pulled away.
"Hey, Grant, do you still need help with that cage?"
Grant looked confused, but he must have seen my unease because he nodded.
"Yeah, that'd be good."
I looked back at the crying gray old man and smiled nervously. We got in the elevator and I escaped upstairs. I then told my manager what was happening, and they noticed how much this freaked me out. Thankfully, I didn't see this man for weeks. Having a week holiday definitely helped. A friend did say he saw him around and he was looking for me. I came back to work, and not a week later, I came to the front registers to start my shift and saw him. Luckily, he didn't see me. I stopped and headed back to the elevators. I found my manager and told him what was going on, and he told me to go downstairs to the basement and stay there until he came and got me. I don't know what happened except what I was told. Apparently, the man started yelling and saying his granddaughter worked here, and started yelling that he needs to see me. The security and my manager tried for about 10 minutes to get him out of the store. He had with him photos of a female with a bracelet. I can only assume that they were of his granddaughter. He started screaming his granddaughter's name and had to be dragged out of the store. From that day on, I spent most of my time in the basement working registers there. I left the job to move back to Adelaide soon after, and I did kind of feel sorry for the man. Having suffered such a loss, he was obviously not accepting their deaths. In saying that, though, old gray-haired target man, let's never meet again.
So, a few years back, I was cruising around with my brother, cousin, and a few friends. We decided to go down this creepy back road. We got to the end of it, and there was a trail that continued off of it. we decided to get out and walk the trail, even though it was pitch black out. We didn't really have a good feeling about the place, but regardless, we pressed on. Now, let me say that if anyone else had come down the road, we would have seen their headlights in the woods. So after walking for a little bit, we all went back to the cars. My friend, Alex, stopped and said, "What's that noise?" We all stopped talking and heard a hissing sound. His tires on his car had been slashed. We all panicked because nobody would be at this dead-end road in the middle of nowhere this late at night. So we thought. So we got in the cars and took off. Not too far down the road, his car was undrivable, and we had to squeeze him into one of our Jeeps. We went to a gas station to get some snacks, and when we came out, the Jeep's tires were slashed too. I don't know how that could have happened. So it seems like someone had followed us and slashed our tires. So, creepy forest-dwelling tire slasher, let's not ever meet.
Some background info. I work for a company that receives donated clothes and goods that we give to those in need, mostly orphaned children and low-income families. We drive 5-ton trucks around the province and pick up materials from houses and businesses. We get a list at the beginning of the day with addresses, phone numbers, names, and special instructions. Yesterday I had a run in our city and had a stop in what is nicknamed the Reserve, which is essentially a 20-block radius of low-income families and is the population center for our First Nation locals, hence the name. This area has an extremely high crime rate and is really not a good place to be. The house on my list was just on the southern edge of the reserve, located across the street from the set of train tracks and a field. What was odd was that the list had an address and special instructions with no name or number. This is the first time I had seen something like that in the 6 years I had been doing this. The special instructions simply stated, "Empty house, come inside." Get the When I arrived at the house, I was nervous as the house looked abandoned. The front door was missing, there were several broken windows, and the yard looked as though it hadn't been groomed for decades. A jungle of tall grass, weeds, and trees obscuring a dilapidated building. Needless to say, I was on edge. In my experience, these kinds of houses were usually owned by a drug user, so I assumed that whoever lived there was a drug user. I made a quick call to the office to make sure I had the right address, and it was confirmed. Shit. I parked the truck and made my way to the empty hole that was the front door. I knocked on the door frame, but there was no answer, so I stepped inside to see the entire place was trashed. The place was completely bare, but it was filled with graffiti and holes in the walls. All the light fixtures were broken and there were puddles of water from rain the day before. I called out into the dark house and received no answer, so I walked into the next room and found a piece of paper on the floor. Like, is there a cage above you as well? The paper was standard printing paper with a message printed on it, which is strange as there was no computer around and I doubted the place had any power. The message simply stated, "I'm in the basement." I found the doorway to what I assumed was the basement, but it was pitch black down there, and a lot of steps were broken. At this point, my brain was screaming at me to get out. But I decided to do my job and call out to whoever was down there. I announced my presence and who I worked for and asked if anyone was down there. There was a silence for a few moments, and I heard an older man's voice coming through the darkness saying,
I'm down here.
For some reason, this made the hair on my neck stand up, and I decided it was time to leave. I called out and said, "It's too dark down there, sir, and these steps are broken. I'm afraid I can't come down. If you want, you can call our office and reschedule the appointment for another day." There was silence for a few moments, and just as I was about to repeat myself, I heard the man say,
"Don't worry about the steps. Just come down here."
At this point, I normally would have just repeated what I had said, but I was in flight mode and I wanted to get out of there now. So instead of giving him a cheerful farewell, I speed walked through the front door and was walking out the front steps when I heard a man's voice one more time saying,
"Where are you going? Come back!"
I broke into a sprint and got into my truck as fast as possible. I put it in drive and took off, possibly breaking the land speed record in the process. I looked back at the house and half expected to see someone standing in the window like some horror cliche, but instead there was nothing. I called my boss and told him what happened, and he said that I should never have gone inside. He told me that a few years ago they had 2 drivers go to some abandoned house and they were robbed by some members of a gang. He said these guys told a very similar story, except I wasn't robbed. With this in mind, I really do wonder if I was walking into some kind of trap, and if the guy was some kind of serial killer. Well, maybe he was a lonely man looking for some company, but I wasn't keen on finding out. I ended up putting up the address on our do not pick up list so no other drivers would go there anymore. He may have been an honest man trying to make a donation, but I wasn't going to risk the lives of my co-workers to go find out. Everything about the scenario felt wrong and sketch, and I'm just glad I didn't get turned into a lampshade.
When I was young, around 10 or so, I was walking home from my bus stop. I lived in this small subdivision with not that many people in my general area and with an overprotective mother who I'm amazingly thankful to have. She always had a password that we used when someone was supposed to pick me up, so I never ended up with someone dangerous. I lived on the same block as my bus stop, so as soon as I got off the bus, I could see my house. Thank the powers that be. Because that's what saved my life. So here I am, a little 10-year-old girl, walking home from a crap day at school, when this red pickup truck pulls up next to me. I'm on the side of the road since there aren't any sidewalks, and I'm a good few feet from the driver's side door. Inside, there's this man. He looked to be in his early 20s, I would say, and he gets my attention. "Your mom told me to pick you up. She's late at work." Red flag right away, because I can see my mom's van in our driveway, and she doesn't work. She's a stay-at-home mom, well, she did work, but she had her own company and she worked nights since she was a DJ. "What's the password?" I had asked, and getting a pause from him as he thought he did his best to give an answer I would find acceptable. She forgot to tell me. But she's home. I see her van in the driveway. Without another word, he drove off quickly, and I never saw the red pickup in my area again. Honestly, I'm thankful that he didn't just lean out the window or jump out the door after me, since, looking back, I wasn't anywhere near far enough away from the truck to make a getaway. So, creepy guy who tried to kidnap me? Let's not meet again.
This happened 5 years ago when I was almost 15, and like most almost 16-year-olds, I was eager to learn how to drive and get my driver's license. So my parents signed me up for a driver's education course near our house. When the first day of the course rolled around, I was super excited to go and had my mom drop me off early so I could pick out a good seat and maybe make a friend or two. Wanting to be cool, I had my mom drop me off without even coming inside. The place was super shady looking from the outside and even sketchier inside. It was in a strip mall, which most other businesses had closed down in. The floor was peeling linoleum, and there was an empty aquarium, not just no fish, but no anything besides old algae, taking up most of the space. No one was working the front desk, and I was nervous to go look around, so I just sat in the waiting area. That's when I met him. He was disgustingly fat, with long, yellowy, greasy hair that hung down his back in a stringy mess. His nails, both on his hands and feet, which were bare, were way too long, and he was wearing one of those faux silk button-down shirts with a tacky dragon on the front. But his stomach was way too big, leaving the spaces between the buttons gaping open to expose his nasty belly. Basically, he had the look and smell of a long-time basement dweller. He approached me with a disturbing, gleeful smile and gave me a hug without asking my permission, and said that's what he did for all his new students. However, when the rest of my class trickled in, who were all males, none of them received a hug. When the lesson began, he talked on and on about the proper attire to wear when driving, telling us an anecdote about a fellow driver's ed instructor who was driving with a female student when they almost got into an accident. Apparently, the slamming of the brakes caused the girl's breasts to come out of her shirt. Who knows if this is true? While telling the story, he was leering at me intensely, and when he finished, he asked,
Now, who would have wanted to be there to see that?
And raised his own hand. I felt so uncomfortable, and it seemed like the rest of my class did too. But that wasn't the end of it. He then came over to me, put his finger a centimeter away from my cleavage, and said in a disturbing voice,
Now this seems like exactly the kind of shirt that could get us into that kind of situation, Pizza Khaleesi.
I was totally freaked out, but didn't know what to do. After the class, a couple of the other students came up to me and told me that I should never get into the instruction car alone with him, to tell my parents, etc. But I was too embarrassed to bring it up to my mom or dad. So I continued to put up with it for weeks. The comments and physical touching just got more and more aggressively sexual, and he clearly anticipated me showing up before everyone else got there, so he could creep on me without my classmates there to help me. For example, he wore a stained Hooters t-shirt to class one day, and whispered in my ear,
I'd love to see your Hooters, Pizza Khaleesi.
Another day, when I was drinking from the water fountain, he left class and snuck up behind me, breathing down my neck, and ran his little sausage fingers down my back to supposedly tuck in my tag. I just wanted to get out of there, and it seemed too mortifying to tell my parents, so I put up with it, and it continued. When we finally reached the end of the course and we had a little party for which he encouraged us to wear fun clothes, for some reason I thought that would be a great day to wear a miniskirt. He brought us hamburgers and we watched auto accident footage despite our protests. This guy was clearly fucked up in a myriad of ways. The most disturbing part of all this was that he had brought a digital camera with him to document his best class ever. He took one group shot of the class, probably for appearance sake, and then continued to take candid shots of me. He also kept holding the camera awkwardly under the table, and it would flash, and he would giggle in his super high-pitched and creepy way, and say,
Oops, that was an accident.
Really, I should have known better. But I was clueless. I didn't think much of him after that. Until a week or so later, a female high school classmate of mine who was in another section of his driver's education class had just had her wrap-up class the night before. Being an amateur photographer, she volunteered to take the photos for him, and he agreed. She was looking back at her pictures in his camera when she accidentally went too far back and found photos of my class's party. She said that there were dozens of photos of me, pictures of my face, but also lots of photos of my legs, and worst, zoomed in photos of my crotch and underwear that he had been taking under the table. She freaked out and tried to delete some of them, but he got super aggressive and lunged across the room at her and snatched the camera away. I wish I could tell you I told my parents, but instead I just cried and felt terrible, and got mad, but ultimately never did anything. Who knows how many girls he did this to before and after me. As an adult, I've tried Googling him to see if he ended up in some sort of sex offender registry or in prison, but no such luck. So creepy driver's ed instructor, let's definitely not meet again.
So, this is a story that happened to my mom's friend in Korea maybe 10 years ago. Every time I hear this story, I still get the chills. My mom's friend lived in an apartment complex in Seoul. She was a stay-at-home mother with a young daughter, and her husband worked during the days. One day, she was coming home from running errands with her daughter and got onto the elevator in her building. When she got on, she noticed that there was a man wearing a cap and a yellow raincoat, and he kept his head low, so she couldn't really see his face. She immediately felt really uneasy, and she made her daughter stand to her side, furthest away from the man. What made her feel even more uncomfortable was that when she pressed the button for her floor, there was no other lit number. And on top of that, she noticed that he was carrying something wrapped inside newspaper close to his side. Things started to click in my mom's friend's head, and she started to panic and decided to take out her cell phone and pretend she was calling home to her husband, who was obviously really not at home and at work. She started saying things like, "Oh, I'm on the elevator and about to get off. Can you get the door for me?" And making it seem like her husband was waiting at home. When the elevator did reach her floor, I think she lived on like the 12th floor or something, she quickly got off and grabbed her daughter and started to walk as fast as she could to her apartment. She noticed that the man also got off on her floor and was slowly following her down the hallway. When my mom's friend got to her door, she started to bang on it and shout, "Hey, I'm home. Please open the door," and kind of pretended like her husband was coming to answer it. Upon seeing this, the man in the yellow raincoat started to walk away back towards the elevator. When he seemed to be far away enough, my mom's friend quickly picked up her daughter and slid open her door's passcode thingy and started to frantically punch in her key code. But the problem was that the buttons would make sounds, so the man would know that nobody was going to answer the door for her. Upon noticing this, he turned around and started to run back towards her. My mom's friend at this point was practically screaming, and when she finally got the door to open, the first thing she did was throw her daughter in through the door. When she got in herself, she saw that the man was pretty much inches away from the door, but she managed to shut it and lock it before he could wedge his hand, or weapon, into the door. Afterwards, looking through the door's peephole, she saw that the man was walking away back towards the elevator. Several months later, my mom's friend was watching the news and there was a coverage on the capture of a serial killer named Yo Young Chul, who used to kill a lot of prostitutes. She told my mom that she could never forget the dread she felt when she saw the all-too-familiar yellow raincoat and the hat that he was wearing when apprehended.
A couple of hours ago, I was in the middle of a coding frenzy. My stomach starts rumbling uncontrollably, and I decided that my coding project can wait a few minutes and that I needed to go grab some food. I lived in the western United States, so the nearest place is always a McDonald's. I just wanted some quick food. I wasn't dressed, I hadn't showered all day, days off, woo. So I wanted to run to the nearest drive-thru and get back. McDonald's it was. I picked myself up from my computer, threw a leash on my dog, and headed out. I loaded the dog in my car and turned the ignition. Outside, there was a bit of light. The sun had just dipped behind the mountains in the horizon, and it was just dark enough to warrant headlights. As I'm winding my way out of my neighborhood, I started to notice that the street lights kept going out as I passed under them, and then coming back on when I passed them, which I thought was strange, but I chalked it up to coincidence, as I've had streetlights go out on me before. I eventually made it to one of the last turns to get out of the neighborhood, but as I pulled up to the stop sign, I felt a wave of something pour over me. I heard the dog whimper. I looked back at her, and she had ducked back into the middle of the back seat, tail between her legs, with her fur sticking straight out. It felt like I went through a thick sheet of static electricity. Honestly, and I began hearing a loud feedback noise inside my head, and the world got blurry. This went on for a few seconds before it cleared up. My car had stalled during this time, so I turned the engine back on and made my way past the stop sign. When I pulled out into the main road, I immediately noticed that the streets were vastly different. They were the usual black, but they had a bright white iridescent color to them as well, lighting up the environment. The streetlights that were usually on the medians of the road were gone as well, replaced by trees. McDonald's was still right by my house. I could see the sign. It was a different building, though. The building was much bigger than usual, but so far this is the least strange thing to happen on this drive, so I drove towards it, still very much confused as to the sudden change. My dog in the back of the car seemed to acclimate to this change much better, as she was back to sticking her head out the window and sniffing the air. I pulled up to the only stoplight between me and my destination, and the car in front of me was something I had never seen before. The logo on the back was a silver circle, with what looked like a silver Sicilian eagle in the middle. On the eagle's chest was the letter G in a cursive font. The model of the car was Vapor. The license plate was the same as any other, though. So I go through the light, still wondering what the hell happened when I reach McDonald's. I get to the drive-thru menu, which is all LCD screens updating to show featured menu items and looping GIFs to people smiling while they eat. My usual is still on the menu, though for $2 more than I'm used to paying for it. So I order that. I pull up to the window with my credit card out and at the ready so I can pay. The worker opens the window and greets me. I greet him and hand him my card. He looks at it and then back at me.
"We don't accept that here."
And then hands me a gadget that reminded me of my dad's blood pressure monitor. I guess I was supposed to put my finger in it? But I was so thrown off, I just asked, "Oh, can I just pay with cash?"
"Cash?"
"Sure, I guess." So I handed him $20, and he expects it for longer than anyone should, and then proceeds to give me my receipt without my change. When I asked him about the change, he looked at me with a very confused face and said, "We don't have cash at this location. We can only give cash vouchers." Okay. So I look at my receipt, and lo and behold, the bottom of it says cash value $11.26. Good enough for me, I guess. I pull up to the next window. After waiting for a few minutes, the next worker opens up his window with my bag of food in hand and a big smile on his face. He hands me the bag and I put the receipt in it out of habit. Then he says to me, "Oh wait, I forgot your fries. Can I have the bag back, please?" So I hand him the bag, and a few seconds later he returns and says,
"I hope you have a great day. I made this best day. Hope you best."
This went on for a few seconds. His face and body motions were moving and resetting like a glitched N64 game. I didn't have time to be terrified during the moment, because as this happened, I felt the wave of electricity come over me again, just like last time. I heard my dog whimper, and when I looked back, she was crouched in the back, her fur extended. And just like last time, I heard a very loud feedback noise in my head. My eyes took a second to adjust, but when the world came into focus, I saw that I was in the parking lot. I recognized everything. This was the parking lot in which the McDonald's I'm used to is placed. And sure enough, the McDonald's was visible in my rearview mirror at its usual place. So I go through and buy food again. My $20 was missing, as was my cash voucher or whatever. So I drive back home. I have no clue what happened.
My friend has this story he tells sometimes because of how insane it is. I asked her if I could post it here, and she said yes. So the following is a quote. Basically, there was this kid on the bus who sat in front of me. We didn't have assigned seats, but everyone kind of sat in the same place every day. He was obviously kind of an outcast. He was overweight and smelled a little funny, and he didn't talk to people. Wore glasses, all those things. There was a jerk on the bus who liked to make fun of him. Well, one day I had enough and told the jerk off. And after that, the kid and I started talking a little. I tried to be nice because he obviously didn't get a lot of interaction, but things got weird fast. He told me he was a vampire, straight up. He gave me this whole story about this girl who was also a vampire that he knew, how she turned him, or how she'd come into his room last night starving and she'd fed on him. It was pretty weird, so I just tried to be like, huh. Okay. He told me that people had to carry a certain gene in order to be turned into a vampire, and that he could tell if someone had it by smell. Of course, I had it. Things got really weird when he started talking like a bad romance novel. Things like, I can't afford to have weaknesses, but I can't help caring about someone, and weird crap like that. It was pretty obvious what he was getting at, but I wasn't used to flirting, let alone, whatever that was. So I just kind of sat, listened, and tried not to make direct eye contact. But by far the weirdest thing was one of the last things he said to me. He was telling me that everyone's blood has a distinct scent. Without prompting, he informed me, yours smells like chocolate chip cookies. So, chocolate chip pickup vampire, let's never meet again.
During the mid-late 2000s, I worked in a camera store with a photo lab. We had our fair share of gross, creepy customers that fancied themselves pro photographers. They shot terrible amateur porn with bad lighting, unattractive models, etc. Our male co-workers usually stepped up to help these customers because the pervs would stare at us, say borderline inappropriate things, or try to get us to look at their terrible porn with them. We had one guy who didn't actually shoot porn, but was equally slimy. He attended porn conventions, yeah, those are a thing, and would bring a dozen or more rolls of film with him from these events. Every frame was him posing with female porn stars. Terrible comparison, but think of a picture you'd take of your child at Disney with Mickey and Minnie. Then replace all the characters with porn stars and replace the child with a hunched over skinny guy that had a greasy bowl haircut, beady eyes, wire rimmed glasses, and a long skinny nose, and virtually no chin. It wasn't just his appearance that was slimy though. There was something just off about him. He was really timid and super quiet, so you'd have to lean over the counter and get close to hear him, and he'd always reek of too much cologne. The worst part about this guy, besides topping off my internal creep meter, was when he'd come in to pick up his pics, he would spread them out across the counter. There were no nudes, so we couldn't stop him, and whoever was ringing him out had to help him pick out the best ones. It was so uncomfortable. To give you an example,
Which photo makes it look like we're together?
emphasizing the word together and drawing out the word in a nasty, slimy way while holding up the two photographs for the poor employee to choose between. He would then order enlargements of the best ones in 8x10 or sometimes poster size. We used to joke that he lived in his mom's basement and would use the enlargements as wallpaper. We had a good laugh about it, but I get shivers down my spine when I think about how that's probably exactly what he did. When I first started working there, we had a coworker named Jeff who dealt exclusively with the porn convention guy. I was actually warned on one of my very first days not to help him and let Jeff deal with him. I think there had been issues with previous employees, but I'm not sure. Maybe Jeff just had good intuition. I remember the sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach when we'd see him coming and Jeff wasn't around to help him. We'd always play the not it game when we saw him in the parking lot. But a few years after I started, Jeff quit. We were all sad because we loved working with him. Then the porn convention guy came in, and we were angry at Jeff for leaving us, and now one of us had to help him. My friend Denise was the store manager and became his designated employee helper person. Things were fine for a while. Porn convention guy actually liked working with Denise and specifically requested her every time he came in. It weirded her and all of us out, but we were all young and dumb and just went with it. One day, I was printing his pics, and the last frame on the roll of film was a picture of Denise from the store. It almost looked like an accidental shot, like one that you just take to finish off the last frame on a disposable. Regardless, I didn't print it, cut the frame off his negatives, and packaged it up. Technically, I could have been fired for that, but I didn't care. Denise approached me later saying that the porn convention guy was upset when he picked up his film. He said that one of his pictures was missing. I found the negative in the trash, showed it to her, and I wasn't fired. It happened again the next time he came in, and every time after that. There was one picture of Denise at the end of the rolls of film, like he was saving that last frame for when he arrived. We always cut the negative out and played dumb when he asked about the missing photo. Eventually, someone sold him a digital camera, and we printed his pictures from a memory card. We couldn't cut off the negative anymore. Instead, we edited the picture of Denise to look like crap. Too dark, washed out, bright pink, whatever we felt like that day. He never said anything, but he always seemed disappointed when he was flipping through his pictures and got to the last one. This went on until Denise was promoted to assistant district manager, maybe 2 years after Jeff left, and she had to travel between all the stores in the state. I became the manager of the store and had to help this creep. Karma sucks. Thankfully, I wasn't his type, probably because I was a giant bitch to him and no images of me or any other employees showed up on his memory cards. One day, Denise is at our store for training, and we see porn convention guy in the parking lot. Denise runs to the back room and hid, and I went to help him like normal, gearing up my bitch mode. First words out of his mouth,
Where is Denise?
I reminded him for the umpteenth time that she no longer worked here.
But her car is here.
I'm speechless and just stared at him, jaw on the floor for what felt like 10 minutes while trying to think of something to say. Finally, words came out. I'm not sure what she drives, but she's not here.
She drives that blue Cavalier right there,
and points at Denise's car. I'm seriously creeped out, grossed out, and completely dumbstruck. All I could say was, "No, it's not," like a stubborn toddler, and walk away. The guy didn't leave. He lingered at the front of the store for a half hour, pretending to look at picture frames. Denise hid in the back room until he left without buying a frame or saying a word. We called her boss, the district manager, and explained everything. He told Denise not to go back to our store, that he'd handle our training from then on, but unfortunately, the porn convention guy hadn't done anything illegal, and nothing he did would warrant us refusing his business, so we had to keep helping him when he came in. Next time he came in, there was a photo of her car on his memory card, which I deleted. Again, something I could get fired for, but who is he going to tell? Denise was basically my boss. Cue the recession, and our business was hit bad. Our district manager went from having 25 stores to 3. Most of the managers kept their jobs and moved to one of the 3 remaining stores. Denise became sales manager. I worked in the photo lab, and our store manager was a complete douche. We had a sales guy named Nick that was a big guy and a total hard ass. The first time we realized porn convention guy was bringing his pics to our store, Denise wasn't there. I went to print an order and saw his slimy face on my computer screen and just felt sick to my stomach. I told the manager and everyone about this guy and his fascination with Denise. Nick said he'd help porn convention guy from then on, so no one else would have to deal with it. Denise still drove the blue Cavalier, and the same thing started happening. We'd see him coming, she'd hide in the back.
Where's Denise?
Not here.
Her car is here.
Not her car. Then he'd linger in the store, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, sometimes for over an hour, and leave without saying or buying anything. We called the cops once, but they said that they couldn't do anything. The district manager still wouldn't allow us to refuse him service. We just continued to do what we could. Denise never worked alone, and we always made sure that she was safe in her car at night before anyone drove away. It all came to a head about 6 months after most of the stores closed. Porn convention guys in the store, lingering. Denise is hiding, and he just strolls on through the door to the photo lab into the back room where Denise was sitting. Nick and I followed and stood in the doorway shocked as he stood there staring at her with beady little black eyes, smiling his creepy, closed-lipped smile. No one said anything for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the store manager pushes through me and Nick in the doorway and tells porn convention guy he can't be there. Porn convention guy says nothing, shuffled his feet a bit, but keeps staring at Denise. I could feel how horrified she was from across the room. The useless manager then says, "Sir, you have to leave. We have photo processing chemicals back here. It's against OSHA policy for you to be here." Stupidest statement ever, but totally true. Technically, that was why he shouldn't be back there. But "get the fuck out, you fucking creep" was way more appropriate at the time. The manager is essentially useless in this situation. Denise was almost in tears. I'm in shock, and Nick, well, he looked pissed. It happened pretty quick, but I swear Nick jumped over a 6-foot table and got in porn convention guy's face. Or more like towered over the cowardly little man. Calmly, quietly, but filled with rage and anger, Nick says, "Get the fuck out and don't come back." Porn convention guy was practically pissing himself. He backed up towards the sales floor and walked backwards all the way out the door, visibly shaking the entire time. Nick stayed within inches of him until he was outside. We called the cops again. They can't do anything. We called the district manager. Nick got a slap on the wrist for chasing off a paying customer, followed by a "good job." Denise went home for the day. We, of course, walked her to her car, and porn convention guy never came back to pick up his creepy enlargements. I like to think that every time he stares in the gap in his porn convention wallpaper, he remembers Nick towering over him, ready to smash his greasy bowl cut covered head into the table.
This happened a long time ago, easily over a decade. I couldn't have been older than 3 or 4. Either I forgot it over time, or it's a repressed memory at this point. I only know this even happened because my mom told me. Anyway, as a kid, I loved to go to stores with my mom and run around and play hide and seek. Right off the bat, you can see where this is going. One of my favorite places to hide was in those clothing racks and wait for her to peek in and say boo before I would giggle and run away to the next one. At some point, I disappeared from that section. My mom went to customer service to get them to call my name. When she got there, she saw another parent asking the same thing. She watched as the employees, and even other customers, roamed the store calling out our names. She began to hyperventilate and excused herself to stand outside and catch her breath. Then she saw the cart boy, holding my hand, walking me back into the store. It turns out, he was trying to get the kids to follow him with quarters, promising to let them play the games at the front of the store. When I didn't get my quarters, I pitched a fit and he decided I was more trouble than I was worth. When the cops tried to ask me what happened, I refused to talk to anyone except my granddad, who was on the force at the time. I told him that the man tried to bring us to a car. There was a lady in the car too, with something funny on her head that I couldn't describe. All they knew was that I said it wasn't a hat or a wig. Every friend I've told this story to, and even 4chan's B, was considerably freaked out by this. To my knowledge, the girl was never seen again. But I may not know everything, so I'll have to ask again. But it's terrifying to think what would have happened if I wasn't such a fucking brat when it comes to video games.
Evening all, I've finally caved after months of reading these stories to contribute one of my own. I may end up posting more as I've had an interesting life, but a story I just read made me think that this one fits the bill and isn't liable to screw me up in the recollecting process. For the record and whatnot, I'm a 26-year-old guy living with one of my best friends and my boyfriend of 6 years, who I'll be calling Lucas. A few years ago, I found a story online that hit me like not many of them do. It was a very long fictional story, and it was written incredibly brutally well. If you're a fan or familiar with Poppy Z. Bright's writing in romance style, it was like that, and I absolutely fell in love with it, particularly the author's writing style. I'm keeping it vague because this guy is kind of well known, at least in certain parts of the internet, and despite all of this, I still have mixed feelings on him. We'll get to that though. About a half a year passed, give or take, and in that time, the computer I'd saved it on shit the bed. So when out of nowhere I got thinking on that story again, wanting to reread it, I had to hunt it down all over again. I remember that bits of it had been on DeviantArt, and I started there, figuring the scraps and teaser bits might lead to the full story. I found the author's website instead, which had links to actually buy the damn thing, which made my day. I managed to re-find the story online, wishlisted the physical copy, and then found that the author, who I'll refer to as Sam from here on out, had several social media links up. One of them was Tumblr, which I was, sadly, a pretty avid user of at the time. I shot him an anonymous message, as was my habit at the time, lauding his wonderful writing and lauding the impact it had had on me, following him on the site immediately after. Somewhere around this point, I got the guts up to write him personally, and despite how silly it sounds and felt at the time even, I was almost ecstatic when he responded. We started emailing back and forth due to Tumblr's tiny word limit, and eventually waiting time led quick enough to chatting on Yahoo Messenger. Around this point, I was having a lot of emotional issues. I've dealt with severe depression and anxiety for more than half of my life. If I ever post some of my other experiences, a lot of that will make sense. It was an awesome distraction. He was a huge Stephen King fan, as am I, and we bonded on that right off the bat. From the first night we talked, we were sharing music preferences, sending little bundles of songs we thought the other might like. It was nice, and it was a pleasant surprise since the songs he suggested I actually did wind up liking. Things changed, and sometimes I kicked myself for not seeing it coming, because he wasn't exactly opaque about his oddities, but I blame a lot of how much respect I'd built towards the man on his writing capacities. We talked a lot. He started sending me videos, mostly everything and anything about Roz Williams. Sam was obsessed with Roz, and obsessed with hating Valor Khan, the singer who took over after Roz committed suicide. I'd never known much about Roz's music or ideas, and I'll totally confess that I was intrigued after hearing a bit of it. I could sympathize with Sam's rage too. There was this brilliant artist who just hit his breaking point and given into it, and his legacy was being eradicated by this guy, Valor. It just got ridiculous though, and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Sam was obsessed with gore. I went through a heavy Guro-chan phase when I was younger, so it didn't faze me at first, but after a while it really suffocating, unnecessary, and way over the goddamn top perverse. Don't get me wrong, he was never offensive and never made a single uncomfortable advance towards me. The furthest it had gone at this point was him telling me I was lovely, and to stop thinking poorly of myself, which I honestly appreciated and still do. Just constant commentary about his boys and what he wanted to do to them. Everything was a fetish to this man. Medical, absolutely. Intestines, totally. Musicians he respected on their knees vomiting and having breakdowns, fuck yeah. It's like there were no borders, no off-limits. An absolute lack of respect because everything had to be perverse. Everything had to be fappable. It was annoying, but not really disconcerting until he started telling me about his relationships. Here I actually feel a bit guilty, but hell, I'm in this far. He insisted that he was in a romantic relationship with 2 ghosts, his 2 pet ghost boys. I'm a believer in paranormal, and I've seen some damnably strange shit in my life, but still, I just couldn't take it. I never said it to his face, and technically I'm not calling him out. I never said it to his face, and technically I'm not calling it outright impossible, but it was just goddamn much. Way too goddamn much. He'd tell me about visiting Jeffrey Dahmer on the other side, and partying with him. What, really? It referred to everyone that wasn't him or someone he approved of as mortals or humans, like a 12-year-old kid hitting their Anne Rice years. So many things. Somewhere in this mess he told me he had multiples, but they weren't multiples. And some weren't human, but they're totally more than ghosts. I don't even fucking know. It just kinda piled. It started getting way worse, mostly with him freaking out inexplicably and going off about they and them or saying it was the Zool, but I don't even have the patience to get into that clusterfuck. And some point much earlier, in a moment of utter idiocy, I'd given him my boyfriend's phone number. My phone at the time was out of commission, and Lucas's phone was the only one really solidly working in the house. and he'd offered numerous times for me to text this guy when our internet crapped out. We texted a few times, and once or twice Lucas and him would trade messages. The first night I talked to him on Skype face to face, it had been both Lucas and I, because I'm desperately awkward with Skype for some reason. He started texting constantly, 5 a.m., 3 a.m., 11 p.m., just really fucking unnecessary hours. I don't work a 9-to-5 job because of my previously mentioned issues, but Lucas does. And just because I don't sleep for days on end doesn't mean that he doesn't. This guy just did not seem to get that. He'd get cranky when I signed off to make dinner, signed off to try and sleep, signed off to try and spend time with my boy. It started to feel like I was his only friend. And I began to first seriously suspect that, and then later completely believe it. Somewhere in a realm of 4 to 5 months of us talking, he'd been getting much worse, talking about his dead boys nigh incessantly. When he wasn't spamming my inbox with either videos, songs, or pictures of Raws, complete with paragraphs of fanatic gibbering, when it got just fucked up. Downright completely fucked up. I couldn't check my fucking email without him seeing me as online and hitting me immediately with 4 to 5 messages. I'd stop going online for days on end, and when I came back, he was like a cat that hadn't been fed in fucking weeks. Just up my ass and suffocating. I'm a musician, and an acquaintance of mine invited me out of the blue to a casual open mic night. I was freaking out, trying to decide whether I should go or not, and texted him to get input. He'd gotten excited and told me something along the lines of, "If you think you can, I think you definitely should." So that was it. Him, Lucas, and another friend all saying go for it, and I caved. When I told him it was on, he seemed pretty happy for me, and told me to tell him all about it when I got back. Me and Lucas walked down there, I played a few songs, and it went amazingly well. I was absolutely buzzed for hours afterwards, as it had been the first time I played any kind of live event in almost 10 years, and it went so well. Later that night, around 10ish, I texted him to tell him how good it had gone. He was incredibly bitchy in response, and immediately sounded like the kind of significant other or spouse that will push you to go have fun or do something that you want for the express purpose of attempting to guilt or berate you for it later. That got me irritated, but I was entirely too pleased to care much, so I tried to drop the conversation. He apologized at some point, asked to call me, and I accepted. What followed was about 3 hours on and off of him either drunk to borderline time travel excess having a full psychotic break, or drugged out to the point where even Keith Richards would be concerned. He started talking in different tones, different voices, talking about himself in the third person. Like I mentioned earlier, he supposedly had some kind of alters that he would later begin sending me messages as, designating the personality shifts, of course, by changing the colors and fonts. I'm not gonna count that out completely, but holy shit. He started saying incredibly strange things when he wasn't sobbing so hard that the sound cut out, one of which still freaks me out to this day. He'd been mid-sentence crying and screaming about, "They did this to him. I've seen him and it's killing him, and they did it." And then clear his throat, calmly apologize, and ask me how the open mic night went. Jesus. It was during one of these quiet bits where he started talking in one of the creepiest fucking voices I've ever heard, though I still can't explain why it shook me up so bad. I don't remember how it went exactly, but I've still got the gist of it. I was in the middle of trying to explain how the thing went, and he cuts off in his weirdly soggy, gravelly voice that I could hear the crazy smile in.
"They're not like you, you know? You didn't belong there with those things."
I stop, ask him to repeat, or at least clarify, and he just essentially rephrases it, saying something like,
"You felt as out of place as you were, and they knew it. They all knew it."
Here's the odd thing. The kid that invited me works with my mom and knows me more by face and reference than personally. And had either of us known more about each other, I probably never would have gone. They're super hippie, like can't go more than a few words without talking in the soft hushing tones about Earth Mother and the man. The only other musician I remember that night was a guy in his 60s playing a ridiculous sing-along song called All Fracked Up. Use your imagination on what that was about. And here's Sam making his absurdly accurate comment for no reason. No, nothing. Just. Fuck. It sounds so stupid, but it terrified me, and he started asking me in the same god-awful voice,
How drained do you feel right now? How much of you did they steal?
And I'm just noping so fucking hard. It sounds downright ridiculous, sitting here and writing it out to strangers, but I lived it, and it just... yeah. This continues for a few minutes until I have to ask him to repeat himself again, and he breaks into screaming at me how I
better know who he's talking about now,
and intermittently asking me how could anyone not love Roz. I mean, how dare they? He also hung up on me a handful of times, ending with fuck this once and fuck you the next. When we actually talked the following morning, he put it on being wasted as fuck. A few months later, he called me again, right around 5 in the morning, and talked for 4 goddamn hours about Roz, and how he felt that the world was prejudiced for him acknowledging his dead boys. Another time around that point, he called me again, absolutely livid because his ex, who was purportedly a semi-well-known model, had had the audacity to mention Roz's name. There's not much of a conclusion to this story, and if you stuck with me this far, I appreciate it. The crazier he got, the less we actually had any kind of conversation. The less I talked to him, and I spent less time online, stayed much more neutral in response instead of humoring him. It luckily just kind of faded. There have been a few moments though, like the time he spammed my email with requests to jump on board some mass reporting spree he was doing on Tumblr because someone's opinion was hate speech to him. Or when his car was stolen, and he sent me a 15-message diatribe written almost exclusively from a we and our perspective. While I appreciate the occasional what the fuck in my inbox, and wish the guy some kind of sanity or peace, let's not meet again, Sam. And for fuck's sake, let's never meet in person.
This isn't really a creepy encounter, but more of a weird one. I'm a long-time lurker, but first-time poster, so sorry for any mistakes. This takes place in the city of Hong Kong, China, where I'm currently vacationing. Hong Kong is a busy and highly populated city, so at times you'll have to walk literally beside someone else. Today, I was in the MTR station, which is basically like a subway, with my dad when we walked onto the escalator. Some of the escalators here are pretty long, so it's possible that you'd have to wait 1 or 2 minutes before reaching the end. Being a tourist, I always wanted to look around, even at the advertisements. So that was what I was doing while waiting to go up. I started looking at the ads on the sides of the walls when the woman in front of me caught my eye. She was in her 40s and was holding her phone up with her arm extended for an unusually long time, even for a selfie. So I wanted to see what she was doing. Now, as I said before, this is a highly populated city, and this was a busy day, so I was standing on the step right below her, giving me a clear view of her screen. When I saw what was on her screen, I was immediately weirded out. She was taking pictures of people's butts. She would focus on a group of people, then zoom in on their pants. After another picture or two, it was clear that she hadn't taken these pictures by accident. Without thinking, I said to my dad, who was beside me, "I think the lady in front of us is a pervert. She's taking pictures of people's butts." To confirm my suspicion, after my remark, the woman turned around and looked at me with an "I've just been caught" look and thrust her phone into her bag. When we got off the escalator, the train had come and the woman looked back at me again and immediately ran to the nearest cart, which was about 5 steps away. There was no reason to run, as the train would stay at each station for a minute or so after it arrived, and the group of people in front of us were not headed for the train. I'm not sure what she intended to do with those pictures, and I probably don't want to know. But after seeing the subjects of your photography, lady with a butt obsession, let's not meet. Hey guys, KingSpook here. Sorry if this one wasn't as long as you guys had hoped. I was a bit under the weather. I'm still a little bit screwed up from a cold. But I'd like to say thank you to Kyle Dobson for collaborating with me. I think he did a really great job, and his channel link will be in the description, so I think you should all subscribe to him. Next one's going to be with B Busta, so I hope you look forward to that. And as always, keep it spooky.